Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to Reflect, Grow, Thrive, a webinar series hosted by Ywca in celebration of International Day of the Girl. I'd like to begin today's session with an acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional owners of the various lands in which we meet around the country. I am joining from Canberra and acknowledge the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people, the traditional custodians of the land I am on. I welcome you to share the lands in which you are joining from in the Q&A function. We recognise that as immigrants to this country, we benefit from the colonialisation of the land now called Australia, and have a shared responsibility to acknowledge the harm done to its First Peoples and work towards respect and recognition. We recognise that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women are leaders in working to prevent the disproportionate levels of violence enacted against them, their children and their families. We also acknowledge and celebrate that intersectional history has largely emerged from Black and Indigenous feminist activism and expertise in the United States and around the world, including Australia. We would like to acknowledge the continuing connection of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to land, sea and community, to pay our respects to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander ancestors, elders, to those here tonight and the generations to come, as it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Now we'll just do some housekeeping. For any questions, please use the Q&A chat function, which will be moderated throughout the session. We will have 15 minutes dedicated to Q&A at the end of the session, so please send them in. We'd love to hear from you. We will be recording today's session, and that will be emailed out approximately 2 weeks from today. We acknowledge that some of the topics discussed during the Reflect, Grow, Thrive series may be sensitive and resonate with you in different ways. If you need to take a break at any time, please do so. Grab a cup of tea or turn off your camera for a while. Ywca staff are also available and you can message them directly via the Q&A function. Finally, we'll be sharing a survey on Friday afternoon and we'd love your feedback on any sessions you attend this week. So my name is Matilda and I will be facilitating today's session. I am currently a part of the Young Women's Advisory Council, or YWAG, which is supported by the Equality Rights Alliance and YWCA Australia. Last year, I was an organiser with School Strike for Climate and an ACT Schools Coordinator for Aycc. I also recently received an award for my community work in the community for environment and sustainability, which is kind of why I'm here today. I'm really excited to be here and cannot wait to hear from our amazing speakers. So one of our speakers is Ellie Simmons. She's a 14-year-old student climate activist from Naarm or Melbourne. She has been an organiser for School Strike for Climate and Aycc since 2019. Ella brings her Jewish heritage into her work and is extremely passionate about social justice issues and First Nations justice in and out of the climate movement. Varsha Yajman is a first-year university student who is also a New South Wales Schools Coordinator for Aycc and an organiser for Students Against Fee Increase. She's been involved in the climate movement since 2018 and was previously an organiser for SS4C. She's very passionate about climate justice and sees it as an intersectional issue that young people have the power to solve. And finally, we have Natalie Isaacs. She's the founder and CEO of 1 Million Women, a global movement of women and girls who take practical action to fight dangerous climate change by changing the way they live. Since launching 1 Million Women in 2009, Natalie has dedicated herself to empowering women to act on climate change through the way they live. Under her leadership, 1 Million Women has grown from scratch into a movement of over 965,000. Through her mission, Natalie has empowered tens of thousands of schoolgirls and hundreds of thousands of women to change the way they live. A former cosmetic manufacturer, her own climate change journey from apathy to action cuts through the complexity of this vital 21st century challenge and delivers a simple message that resonates with women and girls of all ages. Natalie's philosophy for 1 Million Women is that real behaviour change begins with personal action, and that women and girls living privileged lives in wealthy countries like Australia can be powerful leaders of change by acting to cut waste and pollution in their daily lives. So our first question will be directed at Natalie. How is climate change a feminist issue? Oh, Natalie, you're just on mute as well.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Matilda, so much for having me here tonight, being part of this panel with the rest of you awesome young women. So climate change affects us all, of course. It affects everyone, but it's not equal. And women are disproportionately affected. And, you know, before I started 1 Million Women a decade ago, I honestly had no idea about this. I was a newcomer to climate change, number one. But then when I was doing my research and I realised that how vulnerable, you know, women and children are, particularly in developing countries, are the most vulnerable to climate change. And, you know, women make up the majority of the world's poor. Women are on the front line as the caregivers, as the providers of food and water and fuel in many countries. And they are the ones most affected by, you know, drought and floods and famine. And according to the United Nations, 80% of those displaced by climate change will be women and children, and that are already displaced and will be women and children. And so so that was a really huge wake-up call for me. And because when I started 1 Million Women, it was a no-brainer that it was going to be a women's movement. I absolutely knew that. I didn't know much about climate change. I didn't know much about how to build a movement, but I knew it had to be around women. And so when I was doing my research, I also found that, you know, women make up over half of the world's population, of course, but they are underrepresented around the negotiating table. They're underrepresented at big UN conferences. They're underrepresented in all aspects of climate negotiation. And I don't quite know what the number is now, but a few years ago when I was writing my book, it was 23% of all legislative posts, which is not very much. And but the good news is that things are changing. Things are getting better. In 2017, the UN adopted the first Gender Action Plan, which specifically aims to increase participation for women at the UN process. I think the numbers went up in 2018 and then they went down again. But women at these UN conferences only are represented, like I think it's 27% of delegations women are the heads of. So, you know, there is a long way to go. And I think also when I was doing my research, other things that I found were that research shows us that countries with more female politicians pass more ambitious climate policies. And that we can see that, and women bring more empathy to the role of leadership. They are better problem solvers. And over the years, I have consistently seen polls and research that women are 10% more concerned about environmental issues than men. And so, you know, for all those reasons, you know, this is a feminist issue. I don't know how much time I've got to speak, but I can go on. But I think as a woman living in an affluent society in Australia, when I started 1 Million Women, I was doing all my research. You know, I thought that shouldn't I do all I possibly can to live with the least impact on the planet, because we all live under the one atmosphere. So yes, so there are a few reasons why it's a feminist issue.
Well, we can certainly all agree, I think, that you have done a lot and definitely explained really well, thank you, Natalie, that climate change is definitely a gendered issue.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Recently there has been a lot of talk, and this phrase climate justice has really been brought up a lot. Ella, it would be great if you could talk a bit about the difference between climate action and climate justice and why this distinction is so important.
Yeah. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land I'm currently on, the Ywca people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. I think when you're talking about like climate change, there are a lot of names that go around. Like it used to be global warming and that our earth was heating, ice was melting. Then it was like a climate emergency, but like it's more than that. This is a justice issue. It's a social justice issue. And justice means that like people are being affected differently. And the people that have done the least to like cause this issue are the people affected the most. And so climate justice is ensuring First Nations justice, especially in Australia, in a country that was colonised, and that the climate change in Australia has come on from this colonisation. And so when we fight for climate justice, we fight for the issues that surround it and for the other issues. And that this isn't about taking action, it's about serving justice, and it's about giving people this justice and showing that like this is more than just like building renewable energy, but it's about saying sorry and giving back land and caring and showing empathy for the people that are affected. And so I think that climate action doesn't show, the term climate action isn't good enough. It's more than that. And we need to show that like we care about the people and not just the things and the money, but it's really about the people affected, the people behind the action being taken. And so climate justice is definitely a term that I've come to learn and that is being used a lot more within like the climate movement. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing to see the rise of this phrase, and I think it really shows that more people are starting to see the social side of climate change and how important it is that we have that intersectional lens when looking at this issue. So, Ella and Varsha, what made you both decide to get involved with the climate movement to begin with? Varsha, you can go first.
Thank you. Before I answer that, I just do want to acknowledge that I'm on Gadigal land right now. And yeah, First Nations justice is fundamental to achieving any sort of climate justice. And when talking about any of these issues, First Nations people always come first. So getting involved in the climate movement, I was in year 11 and I joined the Aycc, which is the Australian Youth Climate Coalition. And I did their student climate leadership program. And I don't really know much about climate change. I certainly didn't know what climate justice was. But I think I remember seeing a link that my school sent around on an email. And I was like, oh, okay, this sounds good. And then going and just seeing a bunch of university students fresh out of high school leading this amazing movement. I was like, oh, okay, like this is actually a problem. Because I think in geography and stuff, we just learn about, erosion, and that's not good. And like coastal erosion, that's what I learned about, certainly. And so seeing like campaigning and like seeing strategizing to actually fight this massive crisis that we're in and how much it's affecting people, and learning about fracking, those things they became so much closer to home. And I'm certainly not as affected. I'm definitely not on the front lines of climate change. But having family in like India and things like that just really made me realize how important it was for me to get involved as well and to do my part. So then getting through the student climate leadership program and joining school strike after that, and being able to organize September 20th with amazing people. I think, the experience, the time, like everything was just absolutely amazing, and to still be part of it and now see how it is in university is really interesting. But yeah, that's kind of how I got started in it.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and it's so true that, and Natalie, you touched on this as well, it's that we're so privileged here in Australia, and I think a lot of people in the climate movement feel that they have a responsibility because we're privileged and live really great lives, and we won't be as affected as others in this in climate change. And Ella, I'd love to hear you.
I first got involved, so I went to the first school strike that was held in Australia in November 2018. And that was like such a powerful thing. It was probably the first rally protest I've ever been to. So that was like really exhilarating and exciting. And then there was like kind of a downtime, and then the election was happening. And everyone was like, this is a climate election. This is when we're going to make change happen. We're going to elect leaders that are going to create this change. And so I helped out a bit with like the Aycc campaign, lots of postering, going around, having conversations. On the day of the election, I helped like hand out flyers from Aycc, which rated the like how well each party went on the policies. And that was a very disappointing day. Like that night when I saw the results, I was like in tears. Like, how could this have happened when we had hope? And there was a lot of hope lost. But I think I started doing some more things with Aycc, and I was like happened to be in our office when a school strike meeting was on. And so I went along, and that was like amazing. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to help out. And all of a sudden I was like helping organize September 20, which was a massive strike in Melbourne. And like from there, nothing slowed down. It's only become bigger. Like being more involved with Aycc and helping organize school strike, also on a national level, organizing those massive campaigns. So I think like I've always cared about the environment and the things around me, but showing that our leaders didn't take action and that people didn't vote for action made me feel that I have the responsibility to take action now. So yeah.
Yeah, amazing. I can definitely relate to crying on election night. Now, and Natalie, you did already touch on this a little bit, but what really pushed you to start the great venture that has been 1 Million Women?
Well, so, you know, listening to you, Ella, and Varsha, and you, Matilda, like, honestly, you three are extraordinary young women, and I am such a latecomer to this. I got the point on climate change a little over a decade ago. I might have said that earlier. I used to be a cosmetics manufacturer. I had this really different life. I was not connected at all. I thought it was someone else's issue. And, you know, who am I anyway? I'm just one person. So my life was all about over packaging. It was all about, you know, microbeads and some of my products. It was really all about how to get someone's product off the shelf so I could get mine on. It was about being competitive and secret. I'd never marched for anything. And that doesn't mean I wasn't passionate about life. I just wasn't connected to this issue at all. But the very short story is I had an epiphany and I changed. And there are a few things that happened in the year that I changed. Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth came out, which really helped people understand, excuse me, climate. We had this ferocious bushfire season here in Australia early, and a few things were happening, but the thing that actually changed my life forever, and this does go to the point of actual climate action, because I really get what you're saying about climate action and climate justice, and that this is all about climate justice, but sometimes there's the actions that then move you into the justice, and that honestly was my story, because I did something so ridiculously simple. I got our household electricity consumption down by 20% just by being vigilant around the house. And I saw in the bill that I had saved all this pollution and all this money. And it was this action that had this reward. I did this and it gave me a reward because I saved money in pollution. And it was that gave me confidence to see that I was actually powerful through the things that I did. Well, imagine if millions of us just did that. That must be different in some way. And that is what actually started me on my journey. And then I that's how I started 1 Million Women, because I went on and I changed my life. I found my voice. I realized that I was a key player in fighting this climate crisis. I was as important as everybody else. And I thought there must be millions of women out there like I was, disengaged for whatever reason, just not being pulled along this journey, feeling a lack of confidence and not understanding. And I thought, I have to reach women. And with the support of a lot of people, that was really the starting point of 1 Million Women. And so, yeah, I after a couple of years of research and trying to get my head around it all, because I didn't even know who the Environment Minister was at the time, or I was really trying to learn what it was all about. And so it took a little while. But yeah, we launched in 2009, and it has evolved over the years. The messaging has changed, and I'm hearing what you're all saying about climate justice. It is all about climate justice.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for sharing that, Ellie. I think we all have stories about realizing that our voice has power and our actions have power. Now, I have a question that's directed at everyone. The climate movement has been criticised for being predominantly made up of and for white middle-class women. How can we ensure the climate movement not only amplifies diverse voices, but is a safe and inclusive and supportive space? And Varsha, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Being a person of color myself, but definitely still not being on the front lines of climate change, I think this is always a tough one, because it's like you don't want to create an exclusionary space where you're saying, oh, we don't want to involve like white middle class women anymore, but then also making sure to amplify is obviously a bit tricky. I think the best way is utilization of social media, and also like really reaching out to those groups that are marginalized, because I think these massive strikes are really amazing and everything, but it can be quite daunting, and especially not knowing things like police repression and things like that are becoming so much more common nowadays. It is hard to get marginalized communities, because obviously police treatment and everything, like it's such an intersectional issue, and all of these things contribute to feeling scared or just afraid to go to these strikes. So I definitely think the best way to combat it is just reaching out. So I know that for September 20th last year, it was about reaching out to Pacific Islanders and like making sure that they were able to come and that they were able to share their stories. And by doing that, I think that was a really great statement, and saying that this movement is not about one person, one age group. It's about everyone. It's not just about young people. It's basically because climate change is affecting all of us. So I definitely think reaching out is key, and just building those connections and making sure that this movement does have diversity in it. Like the faces of this movement need to have diversity. And yeah, I think we are slowly getting there. It is hard, but especially with Black Lives Matter as well, I think we are realizing how inherent racism is in our society and how much we need to do to get rid of it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Varsha. Ella, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think like I can speak, I guess, within the school strike movement specifically, it's something we've struggled with. Like, it's really hard, but like you're always learning, and to be giving like a platform to speak, and being a welcoming space and stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. And Natalie, of course, your space, 1 Million Women, is a little bit different from the rallying that SS4C does. What kind of ways do you try or will try to make in the future to make 1 Million Women a really inclusive space for everyone?
Yeah, so through the lens of 1 Million Women, it's so key and so critical, because we are a global women's movement, that we are inclusive, that we are women from every corner of the globe, and that we are of every background, of every age, and so we work really hard at, and we know 1 Million Women is, we act in our lives, we do campaigns, we vote, we push at all levels of society when it comes to action, and I really did. up until this year, I just thought we had it nailed. You know, I thought that we through the sharing of stories and through amplifying voices, that we really had it all sorted. And I think that with Black Lives Matter and the, you know, being ripped open and raw about all of that and seeing your place in it, and I think that that we can do a lot more. And there has been a huge shift in the way that we've been doing stuff this year at 1 Million Women. And Varsha, going to some of your points, it really is about listening and learning and using. We have this responsibility with our platform to use it to amplify as many voices as we can, you know, Black and Indigenous people of color, to really help on social media and we have made this big shift. I think you'll see it when you go on our Instagram and with the different things that we're doing. But it really is about being there and learning and educating yourself. And that, I think, is a big shift for so many of us. I mean, 1 Million Women we never actually see ourselves as an environmental movement. We see ourselves as women across the world, but we're all part of the same movement. We are all fighting for this climate crisis. And I think that we all need to educate ourselves. That's the best first step.
Yeah, it's so critical. And I think that a lot of people are starting to see more of the issues we should have done a long time ago, but it's really amazing to see that a lot of different movements and organizations are trying to make those steps, and hopefully do continue that into the future, because there is always going to be more learning to do because of the systematic injustices within our world. So Varsha, if you are comfortable in sharing, what has your experience as a person of colour been within social justice movements? And do you think the climate movement currently does a good job of amplifying and empowering and supporting people of colour and Black and Indigenous people?
Yeah, honestly, I don't think I really identified with being a person of color. It's strange to say, but I think throughout my whole time in school strike, or like even when I joined, I don't think I ever thought about it. It wasn't like I tried to push it away or anything. It just never came to my mind. And I think now, especially like stepping out of high school and moving into university, it's been more of a thing that I've been trying to talk about and just think about, and being like, how does this affect me being a person of color? Do I feel represented? How can I do something about this? And especially like now there's also like a South Asian environmental group as well. And just like going to meetings and talking about how important it is to talk about being a person of color, or like being any sort of like marginalized or like minority in this movement, how important it is. It's all kind of coming together. And I think we are trying in this movement to represent people better and representing marginalized communities. But at the same time, I think we can do more. And I think the way we do more is just making it more accessible. So I think School Strike does such a good job with this. I think Aycc does an amazing job with this as well, just making sure that these opportunities are accessible for people to join by social media, or by like showing up to a couple meetings and getting involved. And I think every single time I like spontaneously show up to a meeting, it's like I see more and more people of color, and I see more and more people being represented, and I think that's absolutely amazing. And in terms of like Indigenous representation, I feel like the way that the dialogue around Indigenous representation has kind of evolved is amazing. It's not, I remember in school assemblies and things like that, we just acknowledge the land that we're on, but it would be just kind of like for the sake of it. I don't think we actually knew the meaning behind it. And now being like the New South Wales Schools coordinator for Aycc, one of the workshops that we did was like how to write an acknowledgement of country and why we actually say those things and how important that is. So I think it's amazing to see how far we've come. And how much more meaning we're putting behind these things, because it's not just about having diversity, but it's understanding why we need that diversity, and that having one group represented isn't enough, because climate justice or any social justice issue is more than just one group. It's about everybody.
Yeah, well, That was so well put. Thank you so much. And so we just have a follow-up question on that. And it's a little bit of a complex one, but this can be open to anyone. How do you think the climate movement should link with other social justice movements such as the Black Lives Matter movement? Does anyone want to put their hand up for that?
I can.
Oh, sorry, you go, Ella. You go.
Are you sure? Okay. I think that within the climate movement, it's about like what Varsha said about reaching out to those communities. And I know that in the Jewish community, we've really tried. We've gotten Jewish schools to come together. There are lots of Jewish youth groups. And so we've tried to get all these Jewish youth groups to come together and go to rallies together, to come make posters and banners together. And there was a massive group that went at September 20. And it's an incredible thing to show that each separate community can come together on this issue, and that fighting racism and all these different issues are always connected. There's always an underlying effect, and that we all have a way we can relate to this, whether it's our culture, our heritage, but we can all relate to this and we can all come together because it affects every single person. Whether you've already been affected, you are being affected currently, or you're going to be affected, it's affecting you. At one point in your life, it's affecting you. And so it connects so well to everything that everyone can look in and find a way that they feel connected to it. And of course, it's going to be different. The reasons each person comes into a movement and the role they have in a movement is very different, but everyone has their own story and their own reasons. And so it's about thinking and talking to those people, and if you're part of a specific community, reaching out to them and trying to bring people in together.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you. And it is so true that the climate movement has such a wide and big base. And if we can just lend those numbers as well to other issues that are interconnected and just as important as the climate crisis, then we can see a lot of change. And Natalie, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I was just going to, reinforce what Varsha had said earlier and what I had said, and Ella, just that I think that the climate movement is already moving in that, we're already moving in that direction in terms of linking them together. And, you can't have climate justice without racial justice. And that, I don't think that story has been told well enough until this year for a lot of us. And although it's been a story that's been told over and over again, I think that a lot of us heard it much more clearly this year. So I think that is shifting in that direction. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a shame it has had to take so long, but hopefully we can start to see changes now and into the future, and that can hopefully come as fast as possible. So Ella and Varsha, you both do so much within these spaces. More recently, Ella with the September 25th action, which saw over 600 actions organised across Australia, which is amazing. And Varsha with Students Against Fee Increases, which has done some amazing work in the past few months. How do you avoid burnout and maintain your mental health and optimism within these spaces?
I'll just kick off. I think mental health, it's just a hard one, isn't it? I don't think there ever is a proper balance. I definitely do have my phases of burnout. I think it's just every single time I do burnout, it's learning what triggered the burnout and then how I can combat it and get through it. But I'm starting to realize that just not taking on as many things, because I think it's great to feel like you can do so many things and help. And obviously that's what being part of the social justice movement or doing anything for it is about. It's about helping, but there's only so much you can do. And if you're not being productive and if you're not being able to put enough time and enough effort into these things, it's not really useful for you being there. I've kind of thought about it that way because I think it's really easy to kind of internalize all of these issues and be I'm the only thing that can actually help. But if I don't do it, then who else is going to do it? And you see all your friends and these amazing people doing so much, and you just feel like this massive pressure to like, I need to go to that strike, I need to go to these meetings, and you just can't do it sometimes. And there's also things like school and just having friends, and like that balance is so important. So I think for me it's just staying off of social media. So now, like in the past few days especially, I've really been making an effort to kind of step away from that, and then also knowing like what I want to be part of and how much I can do, because I'm one person where we all have capacity and we all have limits, and that's fine. There's going to be some months, some years where you can do more and other times where you can't. I understand that climate change and like any of these issues needs to be thought about now. Like we can't just let it go on for another 10 years and say, oh, I'll fix it then. But there's also this level that we all have, and I think just staying within those bounds, because we need to remain happy and healthy as well to continue sustainably.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to be sacrificing our own well-being for the sake of a movement. And Ella?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard. Like, honestly, there are so many times when leading up to like a massive event, it's like having several calls every single night for weeks on end. And it's like, how do you deal with that? And sometimes it's like just picking and choosing the things that are like the call you need to go to most, or can you read the minutes afterwards? Like, you don't always need to be everywhere. And also, like, you can ask for help. Like, there are so many people in these movements, and there are always people that are happy to help. And so it's also about like prioritizing things, I guess. We've seen it, like, we're doing all these campaigns, but we need to think about like what our overall goal is. And we need to be thinking about like how we're fighting for that goal and the steps we need to take to get there. And just like, sometimes it's just like taking it down a bit and just taking a break every now and then after a big event. Lots of things quieten down for like a week or two, hopefully, so people can regenerate a bit for future things. But I think it's hard, and obviously something I'm still learning very much so. But yeah.
Yeah, it can be very hard as a young person to juggle school and work and managing all the responsibilities. I personally know that there's a lot of people that have experienced burnout, as you can probably all attest. And with these movements, I think across all of them, it can be very hard when you feel so passionate about an issue to just keep going and going and pushing yourself until it's fixed. But that's an impossible task. And thank you so much for sharing some of your tips and tricks. And I'm sure we'll all have that learning journey. Now, Natalie, a lot of your movement is about what people can do. And so would you be able to share what you think people and consumers can do in the fight for climate justice? Oh, you're just on mute again, sorry.
Sorry, yeah. So as a consumer, it is, we have incredible power. As individuals and as a collective, we should never underestimate the power that we have through everything we do, through every choice we make. And I have witnessed the frenzy of consumerism, firsthand, because as a cosmetics manufacturer, I used to sell into the big department store chains. I used to manufacture fast cosmetics, which is fast fashion, cheap stuff that you get home and it breaks. And I used to go, I did all these Christmas lines, and a few days before Christmas I would go to the department store and I would stand near my products, and I would do that because I was wanting to see how much of my product was going into the trolley and out to the checkout, because that was sales for me. And for me, I didn't really care at all that you were buying my product. It was $9.95, and when you get it home, that you loved it so much and you opened it all up and the lip gloss lid would break or the ingredients were just crap. And I didn't care. All I cared was that you bought my product. And so as the consumer, if you had, and my product sold really well, the sell-through was so good that I was in there year after year with over packaging and you know, and waste. And I think that if consumers left my product on the shelf to gather dust, I wouldn't be there year after year as a manufacturer, because that would send a message directly to me to tell me that you don't want my product. And I think as consumers, that is our power. Every time you say no to something and you buy some, or you don't buy anything at all, but you say no to something and you've left it on the shelf, you are directly sending a message to that manufacturer that you don't want it. And that is really powerful as consumers. I mean, when I first started 1 Million Women, I found out that we spend in this country alone $10.5 billion on stuff that we barely or never use. And that stuff just gets thrown into landfill. And so as consumers, one of the biggest things that we can do right now is stop over consuming, to take a breath before we buy something and ask ourselves, do we really need it? Because it is a really big issue, and it is part of the climate change story. You know, how we live has a big part to play. And so when, and the other thing I did want to just mention is that women control now 29.6 trillion of the world's wealth. And that's a little bit over 10%, but it's trending up. And by 2028, women will be responsible for 2/3 of worldwide consumer spending. So look how much power we all have as women to stop over consuming. And I think that one of the messages that I always say when it comes to this holistic approach to fighting the climate crisis, it is that we must march in the streets. We must put pressure on our politicians. We must donate to environmental movements. We must, you know, be always sending letters and voting with climate action at the top of the agenda. We must never stop using our voice and our influence. We must all do that. However, we cannot just do that alone. We cannot do that over here and say that we're doing our bit. And we must do it, but we can't just do that if over here we live our lives filled with overconsumption. So we have to do it all. We have to live climate justice and we have to fight for it too. So yeah, that would be my message.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we have all seen in recent years the power that we do have as consumers with boycotts, and that it really does have an impact on the way businesses and organisations do act in the decisions they make. Yeah, because it absolutely influences buyers of department stores. They're not going to have a product on a shelf if it doesn't sell. It influences corporates. It really, never underestimate that, the power of every dollar that we don't spend. Yeah, definitely. Now we have lots of really great questions that have been submitted by the audience for the Q&A. Please keep sending them through via the Q&A chat function. But the first question we have is for Natalie. How do you encourage family and friends to give zero waste gifts at Christmas? This audience member has been giving these for the past few years and has asked for the same, but hasn't really been able to get through to her family.
Oh no. Yeah, zero waste Christmas is a really big theme for us. We do a lot of zero waste Christmas. So it's about making things, you know, making jams and pickles and you know, upcycling something or you know, a DIY project, but or an experience or a walk or doing something for the love of earth, and it's all about having that conversation. And I guess if you've been doing that with others and they're not getting the point yet, I don't know, it's maybe directly saying that that's what you want this year. I mean, we do it through the gift of food and without having food waste, but, you know, cooking is a really beautiful expression of love and of gift giving. So, yeah, so it is about making something, doing something, sharing something, as opposed to buying something.
Beautiful.
I don't know if that's helped.
So we have another question that can be directed at everyone. Is there a country that you think that Australia should be basing its climate justice policies on? It's a very interesting question.
I feel like New Zealand has a pretty good start with a lot of these things. I also think that Germany is doing quite well in a sense. I went over there at the start of this year before COVID and everything, and they weren't chanting for climate action, but they were chanting for climate justice, and it's just so common. And I think the issue of climate change is just acknowledged. It's not even contested. I feel like in Australia we're still debating whether it's a thing, and that just shocks me. I'm like, clearly we've had raging bushfires. What else do we need? There's been so many communities that have been affected. New Zealand has amazing climate policies of 100% renewable energy and things like that. And Australia needs to be leading that fight as well, because we're literally the homeland of coal. So yeah, I think New Zealand's a great place to start for us.
Yeah, I'd say New Zealand.
I was going to say, just like, we need to aim big, and like our country, we have heat, we have sun, we have wind, we have the ocean, like we have all these things to become 100% renewable in such a short period of time. And we just need government support in transitioning fossil fuel workers over to renewable energy jobs and be helping these communities to make this change. And as Varsha said, they're debating whether like this is even a problem. Like, it should be way past that. And I think it's very hard, but like we just need to keep fighting for the fact that like we need this direct action and we need it to happen ASAP.
Yeah, it is very disheartening to see so many other countries take that step, take that leap, and have more progressive policies for climate justice. And Australia, it can be seen that Australia is kind of backpedaling, which can be really hard to maintain hope. And I think this next question from the audience touches on that, is the fear that global warming and climate change are such huge problems that have compounded over so many centuries. And do you think we are too far down the path of using and abusing the earth to generally fix this issue? Do you think we can change fast enough?
Okay, I'll give it a go. And I must say, if you haven't watched David Attenborough's doco, actually there's two documentaries that you should watch, everybody, and one is Kiss the Ground, and it's a beautiful story about the soil, and also David Attenborough's doco that was premiered on Sunday night. It's pretty amazing, and although in his documentary he takes you down to the bottom, like you go right down, and you think that maybe you're going to stay there at the bottom, but he brings you up, and he brings you up, and he finishes on this message of we can do this. And I think that there is no place for despair. There's no place to go from, I don't know, inaction right across to the word despair, or denial to despair. Or we have to stay in that place in the middle, which is about doing what everybody on this panel is doing. And we have to be optimistic. We have to have gritty determination. There can't be room for anything else. Yes, it is we are up against it. There is no doubt about that. But there is a window. There is a window here, and it needs us all, and it needs us all now. And we've got to be determined.
Yeah, I love that message, Natalie. Like, we can't give up on a hope. That's all we have, and there's no other alternative. Does Varsha or Ella, do you have anything to add to that?
I think another movie, 2040, really showed like all these incredible things we have in the world right now. We have them. We've had them for at least 2 years. We know that. And that these things are happening also in like developing countries. It's not like they're happening in Australia. They're happening in India and smaller countries that are like have a bigger population and are suffering more, but they're taking this action. They're building these energy grids that are like powering entire cities and countries because they can do that, and they're trying. And like, I think what gives me hope is like seeing the students that join and the wins we have. I think these wins aren't celebrated enough, especially in school strike. We always win things, but it's like, oh, we have to keep going. But like, we are winning, and we just need to continue. You can't stop. You can't let one thing let you down. And it's about growing and building and having your place in this movement to see where your role is and how you can help. And we need everyone on board. We can't be letting a couple of people deal with this. Our government have shown they're not going to do it. We've lost hope in our government, so we need to do it ourselves. And ourselves is everyone.
Very, very well said. Varsha, do you have anything more to add?
Just quickly, I think we need to give credit that school strike started in 2018. I think it was December 2018, that was the first strike. And last year, September, there was 350,000 people across Australia. There's been 600 actions just a week ago. Things are happening already, and it's not even been a full 2 years. So why not, mobilize more people and get some real governmental change happening as well. I don't think we acknowledge how much we've done so fast. It's just crazy to think about. And we definitely do have that hope, and we just need to keep going strong with that, because when everything else is kind of falling, if we have that faith in ourselves and the faith in the entire movement, that's something to just kind of go by.
Yeah, amazing. Beautiful words of hope from everyone. Now, we did kind of touch on this already, but how do you and people maybe, how do young people involved in this movement maintain balance in their lives, like work and school and friends, or do you not?
I think lots of us, I think I've met like some of my closest friends through this. And so obviously there's like this thing when people join a social movement, it's also to make connections. And like, we have friends in this movement, and they are all such strong people who care so much. And that lots of us, we do spend time working on that, but we're also there to like help out if you need help with some schoolwork. And like, we take the time to do all the other things we need to do. And it might be like just switching off for your hours of school. I'm not allowed my phone at school. So when I go back to in-person school, I can't be checking Slack. I can't be joining meetings and calls. Like, I have to do that. And so it's also about just like taking breaks. I think we really are trying to like just take breaks in between calls, and knowing your limit, but also knowing that like everyone's here for each other. We might be trying to do this, but we're also like good friends. Like, we're also just friends as well, that hang out, do fun things. Like, yeah, there are many elements of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And last year I was in year 12, and Matilda, I'm sure you can relate. Just like that balance between school and then like having a job, and then also like having your hobbies while trying to get through your final exams. It was a bit of a tricky balance sometimes, but I found that having this was just an amazing break away from school and study, and like being able to talk to people about like seeing change happen, because I think school it's amazing, but it can also be just really draining sometimes. And I feel like once you're too invested in a movement, that can also be really draining. So just having that balance between like, I'm not going to get drained by either of these things, because I have to split my time, and I also have a life, outside of these two. That's what I found worked best. I definitely think if you're thinking of joining, just take it slow. Like, don't sign up to everything. That's not a great way to start. Take it easy, and yeah, just ease yourself in.
Yeah, amazing. So I would just like to invite everyone to share how people might get involved with SS4C, Aycc, and 1 Million Women. Natalie, would you like to go first?
So, so with 1 Million Women, we've got a lot of things going on at the moment, and we would love everybody involved with all of them. We've got, at the moment, we do a lot on food waste. It's been a big focus for us, you know, over the last decade about reducing household food waste. You know, if food waste were a country, it would be the third biggest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions. So it's pretty up there. So we're doing this Food Waste Free October campaign, and so I'd love you to be part of that. You can you go to our website, which is 1 Million Women, the number 1 millionwomen.com.au, and you'll be able to register from the homepage of the website, or it's on our Instagram page. So that's a big campaign. We've got a divestment campaign as well happening. Shifting our money from banks and institutions that invest in fossil fuels is a really big action that everyone can take. And so it's looking, it's looking at who you bank with, where your super's with, and switching. So we've got a campaign about pledging to switch. We'd love you to be part of that. Follow us on our Instagram and Facebook, and read our blogs. Download our app. We have a 1 Million Women app that is a free app to help people move them along their climate change journey. If you're in Sydney, we've got a big coastal walk happening on the 1st of November for the love of Earth, a social distancing walk. So it's really about just being part of the movement. And once you join up, you'll get everything that's going on. We've got this big event happening at the end of the year that is about having this gritty determination for 2021. So you'll be able to, you know, see all the different things going on. So join Instagram, Facebook, our, you know, website campaigns. Just get involved in some touch point with 1 Million Women.
Yeah, well, it sounds like there's so much going on, and that's incredible. And it's really great that there's so many ways for people to get involved, and I hope everyone does. Ella, would you like to share a bit about how young people will see?
So School Strike currently have our gas mobilisation. Our action on September 25 was to move the government to funding money for our future rather than for building more gas projects. And so there's a pledge up to help do that. And as an individual action you can take is checking which gas and electricity you are. Origin Energy, there's a massive campaign currently against Origin Energy who are fracking in the Northern Territory. So if you're with them, go check that out and find some better alternatives, because there's a lot of like destruction going on with that, and it's definitely something that we're fighting against. And so gas is our major thing at this point. But like, if you know youth, children, teenagers, school students, like get them on board, explain them, like bring this into their lives, I guess. And like School Strike is such an open place. It's very easy to sign up on our website. We have amazing ways to bring you into the movement. And there are many more actions coming. We saw the funding, the government's funding budget just come out. So there will definitely be some actions coming up from that. I reckon there are things going to start from tonight. So look out for those.
Fantastic, thank you. And Varsha, would you be able to share a bit about Aycc?
Sure. So Aycc's got quite a few ways to get involved. Literally just, I think the best way to is honestly just signing up to like their mailing list, because you can figure out which campaign you actually want to be involved in, because they run quite a few. So they have like a gas mobilization one, but then they also have things like the Student Climate Leadership Program, which is how I know I got involved. And I found that like the best way, especially not knowing much about climate change or climate justice, I just found it a really great segue into it to be able to learn and then also get involved. So it's run by like people like myself and Matilda and Ella, and yeah, it's just amazing. A bunch of young people just teaching you how to campaign and how to also look after your mental health. We actually have a workshop this week on like sustainable activism and things like that, which is so important. And then we also have like a strategic plan that's currently in the merge. So the entire like look of the Aycc is going to kind of make sure to have a more specific shift on this whole gas mobilization, because although they've been like fighting fracking for years, it's more serious now than ever. So I think it's high time that people get involved if you can, and yeah, just join us.
Fantastic. And now before we finish up, is there any last advice you have for others who wish to get involved in the climate movement or take action on an issue they are passionate about? Ella, would you be able to start us off?
Sure. I think just like know you are powerful, and that you might not be as powerful alone, but as part of a movement you are, and that it might take time to find your role in a movement, but there is a place, and that we can't do this alone. We need to do it together, and we're not stopping, we're not slowing down. Things are only getting bigger. And so we need to aim big, we need to have big goals, and we will get there.
Amazing. Natalie, would you like to have some last words for us?
I think just, don't delay. If you're thinking about getting involved, if you're passionate about something and you feel you want to do something about it, just don't delay. When it comes to climate, as Ella said, it needs us all, and it needs us now. And so however and wherever you get involved, and whatever you do, get involved in something, because because we're all in this together, and we need us all. We need us all. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you. And Vasha?
I just think joining any sort of social justice initiative is a great way to just let out all that frustration that you have, because it's such a great community, first of all, and then also to know that you're actively trying to take action or making some sort of move towards it, towards a more sustainable future, towards justice. It's very satisfying, and just seeing people around you having that same sort of mentality is really great, because I know that some of us can have schools or families that are quite like not on the same political level, and like we all think differently and have different ideas. So having people who think like you is just really nice sometimes, and it's a great community.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. And it's so true that it's such a great community, and I know that everyone who's gotten involved, it's just lovely, and everyone's so inclusive, and the movement just really wants everyone. And there's so much people learn. And so thank you so much to everyone who joined us for today's webinar. Varsha, Ella and Natalie, thank you for sharing your insights and expertise with us today. You've given our audience a lot to consider. And if you have any...
You're facilitating, you did amazing.
Oh, thanks so much. Now, for anyone in the audience, if you have any additional questions, you can reach out to YWCA Australia team at giving@ywca.org.au. That is giving@ywca.org.au. Thank you for your time, and have a wonderful rest of your night.